you think about that typical male pattern baldness, why you don't get it on the sides, you can think of it as soil. It's fertile. It's fertile for hair growth. But as you age, DHT, dihydrotestosterone, which is the metabolite of testosterone, makes this area inhospitable for hair growth, and then the hair dies and falls out. What PRP does vastly more effectively is also turn the soil more fertile so that you grow your own hair.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, I'm super excited because I got a doctor in studio. I got someone who specializes in cosmetic surgery. I got my man, he's a friend of mine. I got my man, Dr. Reza. Dr. Reza, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Rich.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on, dude. And I'm trying to think the first time we actually met and connected. I want to say it was just kind of like in the industry scene here in San Diego. I feel like we have a lot of the same friends. Last time I saw you, we were out in a boat for your birthday.
Yeah.
It was like 4th of July. I was out in Glorieta Bay on my boat with Champagne Dave.
Right.
And we had a little side tie. And then you had a birthday party later that evening. We saw you guys pull up and went over there. And,
Good memory.
Yeah, stopped in for like 30 minutes. It was
I think
cool.
I remember half of it, but that's okay. That means I had a good birthday. So
yeah, it was a good birthday. You guys were just getting warmed up, man. So
something like that. You can't do as hard as you can when you're younger, which is fine, but we had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Always having a good time and good vibes every time I see you. So thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
So, dude, so much to uncover today, man. You're a cosmetic surgeon and you put a lot of content on. You got a freaking big following on TikTok. You got over 500,000 followers on TikTok, man, and your content's really good. So, dude, I got so many questions. But first off, man, what is like your biggest misconception in today's age that you hear other folks in regards to cosmetic surgery? Because for example, I just got Botox recently, and I'm shocked, man, by how many people I know that make money. They're on camera every day, and I'm like, they're not on the Botox game. And so I'm just like, I'm shocked by I don't know if it's like misinformation or there's uneducated on what Botox is. That's just one example.
Sure.
But I'm a big believer in whatever you want to do to improve your physical look, that's going to, if it's going to give you more confidence and it's going to allow you to be a better version of yourself because of the confidence, I'm like, go do your thing. If you don't want to do it, I'm like, don't do your thing. I support it either way, but I'm shocked by how many people kind of poo-poo the idea of improving or enhancing their physical look.
Yeah, it's a great question. Like in so many other areas, I feel like the folks on the fringe tend to take over the conversation, and the folks in the mainstream tend to get drowned out. It's true in politics, it's true in aesthetics. So one of the things that we hear a lot about is people who get work and it's overdone, it's fake, it's unnatural. But that's not the majority of people. And I think for the philosophy of my med spa, less is more. And I've actually said this to all my staff. When people call on board, I usually ask them, hey, do you have pictures of your previous work? Can I do kind of an interview of what you've done previously? The highest compliment you could pay someone like me is that nobody knows that you came to see me. That is the thing that should guide the successful cosmetic surgeon, the successful cosmetic practitioner. Now, yeah, augmentation of cheeks or lips or something, that's one thing, but it should be tasteful. So the misconception that I hear a lot, it comes from a place of fear because they've seen those folks at the fringes. They've seen the extremes, right? Because good work doesn't declare itself. Bad work is all over the place, plastered all over the sky. And so folks come to me with a certain apprehension, and I always tell them, let's start with less. Let's dip your toe in the pond. Let's not throw you in all the way. Let's see how you like it. Let's just do one area. Let's do this. And the other thing that I always like to impart to people is that preventive care is grossly underrated. Don't wait until the damage is done. And I say this especially to guys, right? We do these Botox events because guys have all this ambivalence. So women are used to being poked and tweezed and prodded, since their teenage years. For guys, they're a little bit later to come into the game, and I see that apprehension. And so having me be there, which a lot of med spas don't have the doctor, but having me be there to talk to them and say, hey, look, I've had stuff done, right? Do I look like a freak to you?
Right.
So I lead by example, and I think those types of misconceptions we try our best to kind of quell as early as possible.
Yeah, I like that. So the only things that I've done, and I'll talk about it openly, so I've gotten some veneers done, like top row here, like the front ones, and then some on the bottom. I used to skateboard when I was a kid. And so when I was like 9 years old, I had a pretty bad accident on the skateboard where I chipped one of my front teeth right here. And so, hey, 4 years ago, I said, hey, like, let me get some veneers. And so I said, hey, make them look as natural as possible so they don't like pop and look completely fake. They're not all whited out. So I had veneers and then the Botox. That's really the only enhancements that I've done to date. And honestly, with the Botox, man, like, it is a game changer. Like, I got to be honest, I didn't really know what it was before. I didn't know that it was preventative, you know? And so now I see photos of me before and after, and it's a game changer. And so now I don't think I'll ever go back. I did my first session back in like March, and I did my second session last month. And so like every 90 days, like, I'm just going to continue to get it. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel younger. And because of it, I have more confidence.
It also saves you money.
Why is that?
So when you think about what Botox does, it relaxes muscles. And what do muscles do? They create lines and wrinkles and they etch it into your face. Now, some guys want it, some guys don't want it, they don't care. But for the folks who care about aging, want to please their partner, you know, do for their partner what their partner does for them, that's a beautiful thing. But if you think about over time what that is going to entail, it's going to end up causing lines and wrinkles that can't be removed once the muscles are relaxed. Those lines are going to be etched and they're going to stay etched, which means you're going to end up doing some sort of lasering, some sort of RF technology, something to tighten the face later. Once you get to the point you're like, holy cow, I look old. And it hits every one of us at some point.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not you because you're not as old as I am yet, but
I'll be 39 next week.
Yeah, well, you know, I wish I was 39, but you know, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. But however, the day does come, that day of reckoning. Sometimes because the kids hit high school for ladies. Sometimes because, you know, you get out of bed and you look over it, or your coworker said something to you. Hey, those lines and wrinkles, you know, what's going on? It happens differently for different people. But when you prevent it from the get-go, it actually ends up saving you money. And I have this conversation with guys. I'm like, look, a little bit here goes a long way later. Trust me on this.
Yeah.
So when I have that conversation, it hits them differently.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. And so now I'm like, I'm on it, and it's like, okay, what's the next thing? So big fan of all that sort of stuff. So I've heard someone say, a couple people now have told me there's like a substitute for Botox that I've heard might be better. What is that one called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
That's a great question. There's a lot of toxins on the market, and most of the ones in the United States are what we call type A toxins, just from how they work. Botox gets the most press, but pound for pound, in terms of potency, a lot of people don't know that Dysport is actually more potent and more longer lasting. I'm not supposed to say that. I'm probably going to get canceled for saying that.
Dysport.
There are other ones called Xeomin.
Xeomin, okay.
There's another one called Jeuveau that is coming out of Korea. And I know that there's another one that's kind of in talks. They haven't really released it yet. I've used all of them in practice. I'm very familiar. And when people say, what's the difference? I'll tell them the skill of the injector is the single most important criteria you should look for. You know, if you put me in a Lamborghini and Dale Earnhardt in a Honda Civic, he would still blow me out of the water, right? It's not the car, it's the driver. And so the person injecting is going to do the job, not the product. So a lot of folks, when they get hung up on, should I do this, should I do that? My answer to them is, go to somebody that knows what they're doing, or come see me.
Yeah, so there's a lot of non-doctors that do the Botox.
Yes.
Should you always go to someone that's a PhD?
You know, there are really good nurses that we've trained over the years that could pretty much match or beat most doctors. I think when the person has a good eye and they have a really good inspiration for how to make people look natural, not overdo it, there's a certain aesthetic sense that I think can't be taught. Most of it can be taught, but there are folks who just get it, right? And it's true in many other fields. There are folks in aesthetics who just get it, and you know. And I like to think that my team is comprised of those types of people. It takes a lot more than just sticking a needle on somebody's face. You really have to know what you're doing, shapes of faces, quantity of real estate on the face that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
How much are you working with? How do you not overdo it? How do you read the person's face? These are all key things that go into determining an expert injector.
I didn't realize how many muscles we have in our forehead and around the eyes that create these lines. And so what is the key when like you're injecting into the forehead or around the eyes? What is the key to finding the right spots?
You know, That's a great question. It does vary to some extent. One of the keys is not, as I say, sending the wrinkle somewhere else. For example, if somebody comes, they want the frown lines done and they don't want the forehead done, I'll say that's great, but your body's going to try creating those wrinkles because you've been using these expressions your whole life. So they'll basically send the muscles elsewhere to do the job that these muscles can't do anymore. So it's basically sending wrinkles where there weren't any before. So a lot of the treatment pathways that I recommend when we do when I have people come on board and we're onboarding them and training them, we have a training facility which we train nurses and doctors to do aesthetics. What I teach them is always prevent harm later down the line. It's not enough just to treat the area. You have to think about what the person's expressions look like. You have to have them sit in front of you, talk to you, look and see how they carry their expressions, and that way you can guide them more expertly about what they need. Because sometimes people think they need something, but they don't.
Right.
So that's a conversation that has to be had before you just start, poking people in the face.
Yeah. So generally speaking, for most folks, would you suggest doing forehead, the crows around the eyes, and then in between the eyebrows?
That's the big three.
That's the
big traditional three. With expertise, you can do around the mouth, you can do the angular depressors, we can do the masseters, I do the neck, you can do it everywhere. We even do Botox in the underarms to reduce hyperhidrosis, which is excessive sweating. So yeah, it's kind of a cool thing that if you know what you're doing, a lot of folks will come, they're working as hostesses, for example, they want to wear low-slung dresses, and they sweat profusely, sometimes right in front of me, they're just pouring out with sweat. Do a little Botox there, sweating's done. But for the majority of people,
what causes all the sweating?
It's kind of a sympathetic nervous system, or autonomic nervous system mismatch. But it's a different mechanism by which Botox works. For beginners, as a general rule, I say stay above the nose.
Yeah, above the nose.
Above the nose.
Okay.
So you're talking the big three that we talked about. Yeah.
And so, how does the Botox stop the sweating? It's freezing the nervous system.
Yeah, it basically it's a kind of a complicated feedback loop, but it works by different mechanisms because it's not relaxing muscles per se. So it calms down that sympathetic nervous system that's causing the hyperhidrosis. Kind of a cool side effect. We've been doing it for a number of years, and it actually lasts about 3 times as long as cosmetic Botox. You get the hyperhidrosis Botox, and you're good for almost a year.
I used to get like sweaty palms when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I don't really get them anymore. Why is that?
Same thing. And people actually have come to us asking us to inject in the palms. And I don't do it just because your hands touch so many surfaces. The risk of infection is much higher.
But why do you think I used to get sweaty palms as a kid, and then as an adult I don't get them anymore? Is it just you think I'm just more comfortable now as an adult, or maybe I was more nervous back then, or what?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Who wasn't sweaty and nervous when they're younger?
Yeah.
A lot of that just maybe be time and maturity and age.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Okay, interesting, dude. So above the nose for Botox, that's good to know. Is there anything for like down here? Like, I don't think I need it right now, but like at an older age, sometimes you get these bags under your eyes. Is that a good option for Botox?
There are options for Botox which can actually widen the eyes. Believe it or not, in certain countries, they actually inject underneath to help to open it up. We do Botox, raise the eyebrow, for example, and that can oftentimes just pull the skin and lift it up just a little bit.
I did some of that.
Yeah. Under the eyes for hollows, typically we'll do filler, or I'll do PRP, platelet-rich plasma. And the eyes are kind of a complex, separate category because you could have bags, you could have hollows, you could have dark circles, you could have hooding. All of these have different ways in which you address it with different mechanisms, sometimes with Botox, sometimes with fillers, sometimes with lasers. So it's a very individualized process. I wish I could give you a short answer to it.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Because around the eyebrows, I didn't realize that was a thing. But the girl that I'm using, she's like, hey, like, do you want to try a little bit? And I'm like, I'll try a little bit. Because when I smiled before, it'd bring like my eyebrow down. That's probably most people.
Yep.
And so we did a little bit there. And then the second session, she was like, do you like it? And I was like, yeah, I like it. And so this time we did like an extra one, and I was like, I don't want too much. But now I see the before and after photos. My eyebrows used to come down when I would smile because those muscles would drag it down. And now it stays up, giving that kind of appearance that your eyebrows staying up. So interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing. But nowadays I get more and more educated. I'm like, okay, it's a whole new ball game that I didn't know about.
Dentists even send me patients because people grind their teeth so much. And a lot of people don't realize that you can actually calm that masseter muscle
in the jaw
down. And that also saves people money. When you think about how much morbidity there is when you actually crack a molar.
Yeah.
And you think about how much that's going to cost. Think about the
Totally.
dental work with that. I've saved people who knows how much money because they've ground their teeth down so much that the Botox in comparison becomes a bargain when you think about it.
Yeah. Do you do breast implants?
I don't, but my specialty is liposuction.
Liposuction.
I did one today, this morning.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people are on Ozempic right now. And so the alternative to Ozempic would be the lipo.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Ozempic.
How come?
One of the other principles at my med spa is not to jump on the bandwagon just because some celebrity is doing something, they're touting some laser. I'm what I call a slow adopter.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because you just don't know how things are going to pan out. These are GLP drugs that have profound effects on the body. The most recent thing that we've been talking about, which actually I did a TikTok video on, was Ozempic face, because the fat loss doesn't just happen in the area you want, it happens all over the body. And you get this haggard look with Ozempic that oftentimes ages you. So whereas you're trying to lose weight, and a lot of times people could easily get onto a successful diet and exercise program. They're not morbidly obese where they're having serious health issues. Oftentimes what they find is 6 months later, they've got this haggard look from loss of fat. And those fat pads are what we restore with filler when you're injecting. But when that happens, it is really an unpleasant look. And that's just what we know about now. When I think about what could potentially lurking, down the line,
Yeah, the long-term effects of Ozempic.
I don't touch something unless it's been out for at least a couple of years.
And how has it been out?
I don't know.
Damn. Okay.
Not long enough to calm my anxiety about
For
it.
sure. And so, who makes a good candidate for lipo? Because a lot of folks, I would say majority of folks, 20 pounds, they want to lose 20 pounds, maybe 30 pounds. But I would imagine that's too easy to go in the gym, put on a diet for 90 days, go work out, you'll lose that. That's probably not the ideal patient for the lipo. So who makes the best ideal candidate to get lipo?
The guy who I trained under was the guy who actually invented tumescent liposuction 40 years ago. His entire goal was to only treat problem areas in people that were doing their part. Proper diet, proper exercise. I've had those folks come in there and they're just obese and they plop down a bag of McDonald's on my desk and they want me to do their whole body. And I politely tell them, I'm not for you. I've done Navy SEALs, I've done Olympic athletes, I've done MMA fighters, I've done triathletes, I've done people who do more exercise in a week than you and I do in 6 months. I kid you not.
Really? MMA fighters are getting lipo?
Two of them.
Really?
Oh yeah, and
Are
they
these
send me their pictures from the gym still.
This is post-retirement?
No, they're still fighting.
Really?
Yeah, I kid you not. I can't tell you who, but
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if you knew some of these guys. But it's just, and then you got these bodybuilders, and they're working hard, and then one of them actually won her competition. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, because I go through the belly button, so there's no scars, so she didn't have any signs of it. And these are people who are really doing their part, and they cannot, for whatever reason. I have a theory, but for whatever reason, they can't get rid of that extra fat. Then they come to me. I do my little interview with them to make sure that they're not, just slacking off. And if these guys come and get their fat removed, the mom who's working hard is chasing after the kids, the person who's working 3 jobs, the person who's, a successful entrepreneur and just doesn't have the time to really go and crack at it in the gym, right? Then you add to that the amount of sugar that's in the American diet, then, compared to 100 years ago, people have a lot of difficulty getting rid of fat. And usually after I make sure that they're good candidates, that they're trying their best, I've done lipo on people that you would never imagine would want to get lipo.
How long is the procedure, and then what's the recovery time for lipo?
Great question. A lot of that depends on the body area. I'm pretty quick. I've got pretty good equipment. I've got pretty good and sharp staff, which really shortens the period of it. Most liposuction doesn't take more than an hour, hour and a half for the totality of the actual procedure, not including the infiltration, numbing, preparation, vital signs, all that jazz, sedation. But for most people, about an hour on average, and you can do per almost any area, any body area.
And what's the recovery like?
Some people are, we call them next day, they're walking their dogs, they're at Target. I tell them just take a day off work, please, just relax.
Yeah, wow, that quick. So just a day or two and they're back at work.
Within a week, they're in the gym.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
How big is the incision when you guys are doing lipo? Let's just say torso.
1 millimeter.
Really?
So I'll make a tiny 1 millimeter incision.
for an entire torso.
Yeah, well, I'll do tiny little 1 millimeter incisions, let's say for the torso.
Okay, so there's multiple incisions.
I'll go like periphery of the belly button, for example, so I can fan it out in all directions, and I hide it there. But I'll use my little retractors and I'll open it up so the skin just bounces back. So I don't actually take out chunks of skin. I'll make a tiny incision. If it's an area where I need a little bit more access, or if the skin's really loose and they've had a little bit of stretching, I might pop a stitch in there just to make sure that the skin approximates nicely.
So the fat just like vacuums out, or it just comes out like that? Huh?
Oh yeah, very easily.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know it was like that.
And then we do this smart lipo. I prefer the radio frequency to skin tighten afterwards and really make it absolutely taut. The added benefit of doing that is actually helps speed recovery. So people actually need to wear garments for much shorter periods when they do the smart lipo, and they get better results faster.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. So I want to switch gears here. This is something that I think is the next step for me. A lot of my podcast guests come on, and I would say all my guests that come on that are, post 35 years old that look good physically, they are all on some sort of form of testosterone, whether it be TRT or some of the other ones that are out there. And it's something I thought about, and I've always thought it would be something that I would, dip into in my mid 40s. But the other side of the argument there is, well, like I'm in my peak years right now, I'm in my prime. Why not take advantage of it now while I have, while I can go out there and enjoy it, right? Sure. And so I've been going back and forth, but for me, I've always worked out, like, especially like the last year, I've been really like focusing on my fitness. I just took 76 days off of drinking and really focused on my physical condition. Thank you. And so I feel like I've always kind of like struggled to build lean muscle. Like it's never come easily. And so I feel like the next move for me would be to get into the testosterone. Obviously, first I need to go get my blood work done. I need to test my levels and see where I'm at. But I think I'm at the point now to where I'm drinking again. As of July 4th, I started drinking again. I'm enjoying July, August, and then starting in September, I'm going to start another run. So in September, I want to go get all my blood work done, and I want to get on some sort of form of testosterone. So I'll definitely do some content on what my experience was and what my findings are. I have no idea what my levels are, but what are your thoughts on testosterone use?
It's a complicated topic, and it was one of the really popular videos I did on my TikTok. It got a huge. It hit kind of a nerve with a lot of guys. Let me give you a little bit of background, which hopefully will be useful to you. A lot of the things that guys are trying to achieve because of the effects of testosterone are not because of the testosterone. If you're going to do a whole panel, you want to get a full panel. You want to not just check your testosterone levels, you want to check your thyroid levels, you want to check your albumin levels, you want to check your estradiol levels, because a lot of the so-called female hormones are going to oppose the things that the male hormones are going to do. And a lot of men have higher levels of endogenous estradiol, which I had as well. And I'll tell them to check that, make sure that those things are ruled out first. And me being the preventive medicine, health and wellness guy, I'm going to first talk about removing the things that lower your testosterone as a first and foremost. Things like diet, things like how much you eat in the course of a day, things like alcohol consumption. Alcohol actually can lower your testosterone levels. Eating too much throughout the day can actually suppress your testosterone levels. So
real quick.
Yeah.
On the alcohol thing, after going 76 days no drinking, and then now I am drinking, one of the biggest differences I notice is my energy levels are like 30% of what they were before. Do you think that's a function because the alcohol has reduced my testosterone levels?
Possibly.
Okay.
It's hard to know without knowing, and I never speak without knowing the facts and the actual data. But the other thing I was going to talk about is diet and how you consume, not just alcohol, but also regular food. Did you know that if you fast, you can actually increase your testosterone levels? Your body, when it goes into a starvation state, and you might, if you really think from an evolutionary biology standpoint, maybe not eating makes your body primed to go hunting. Maybe it upregulates your testosterone so you have more energy to go chase after prey. I don't know. There's a lot of theories behind this that I could talk about for a whole separate podcast. But fasting, intermittent fasting, which I also did a video and a pamphlet on just to help people because it helped me so much, has actually been shown to increase testosterone levels naturally. Because your body, if you help your body create more testosterone endogenously, it's a much more successful way to go than to give it exogenously and then downregulate your own testosterone. Because a lot of guys don't know that once you start on tests, you're committed to tests.
Right.
And after a while, your endogenous production shuts down, and then you're screwed unless you keep.
And that's why that's one of the other reasons I've been hesitant to start it, is because I know once you start, I know I'm in it to the end.
Right. One other thing, I also talk to guys. I teach fitness. I've been teaching for 18 years.
So I was talking to someone recently. They were like, Dr. Reza was teaching a class at my gym. Was it Fit Lit Italy?
I teach at Fit. I used to teach at Little Italy. Now I teach at the downtown
East Village.
Fit,
Okay.
East Village one. I'm actually teaching tonight after this
Are you?
podcast.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So I teach
What do you
twice a
teach
week.
there?
Tonight's a weight training class.
Okay.
And weight training increases testosterone levels.
Especially your legs.
Especially in legs, especially larger muscle groups. So a lot of folks are trying to increase testosterone. I say before you embark on, pills and shots and so on, start fasting, change your diet, cut out alcohol, and start weight training. And if you're not a weight training person, which I think everyone should be, every single person after a certain age should do some sort of weight training, even if it's just reps. If it's not your thing, the next best thing you can do is to do what the Olympic committees recommended for all their athletes who are trying, whatever, for their training camps. Intensity. There was a guy at a swim club in Irvine that sent more people to Olympic trials proportionally than any other swim club in the country. The Olympic team was trying to figure out, what is this guy doing? Well, they found out that he actually had his swimmers were actually swimming shorter yards, but while they're in the pool, he was just obliterating them. He was just abusing them. And so they were much more consistently training at race pace than swimmers at other swim clubs. Like, for example, the one that I used to swim at. That intensity translated into your body being forced to repair. And what it does is it upregulates hormones that do repair and rebuilding, such as testosterone. So rather than reaching for tests, I would say to anybody who's thinking about doing it, come talk to me. I'll put you on a whole regimen. I've done this for a lot of guys. I put them on a really strict diet, fasting, exercise regimen first and foremost. Believe it or not, at least 2/3 of them have not needed testosterone afterwards. So it kind of goes with that whole mission of natural, holistic, don't reach for the drugs and pills like Americans like to do. First and foremost, do the things that your body likes to do and you can actually sustain that have other health benefits first. Because there's a lot of benefits to doing the things I'm talking about, not just increasing testosterone. That's just, the testosterone is just a nice, happy byproduct.
Yeah, and I can contest to all that because during the 76 days, I was working out. I was lifting very consistently.
Yeah.
Before I was working out 3 to 4 days a week, and my intensity was not as high as it was, and so I was working out 6 to 7 days a week. The intensity was better. I was lifting a lot more. My muscles were getting a lot stronger. I saw the gains, but with that, I had better energy.
Yep.
I would wake up in the morning like just ready to rock, just ready to rip the day.
You sleep better?
Sleep better. My business was going like this. My fitness was going like this. Literally everything was getting better. A lot of good things happened during that 76-day stretch. And then now that I am drinking again, I'm like, whoa, I notice it. Huge drop off in energy. The fitness, I go in the gym now. I'm like more going through the motions. I'm not like growing anymore. Literally everything has definitely plateaued since I got back in the drinking game. But my biggest takeaway was I didn't realize how easy it would be to do the 76 days. And so after seeing this drop off, I am like excited to get back on it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to enjoy July. We're almost into August. I'm going to enjoy August. And then right after the summer, I'm going to get right back into it, start another stretch run, and fucking dial it again.
Well, you're doing it the right way. You want my honest opinion. You're doing it the right way because a lot of folks feel like it's either or. And it's that extremism that I think turns people off. Nobody wants to be deprived themselves of a night out.
No.
You don't do it. I don't do it.
No.
Right? I'm still a maniac in the gym. When I go there, I abuse the folks who take my class. Right? And they walk out hobbling, but they're going to still see me out having a drink and margarita with you maybe afterwards.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, listen, you got to live. And if you're doing it your way, I actually think that's actually kind of smart. Give your body a chance to really, instead of just do it haphazardly, give yourself a period where you're really training and you're just putting your nose to the grindstone, doing the fitness thing, repair, rebuild, build muscle. Your body likes that. Give yourself a little holiday, because then your body doesn't get into this kind of a rut. And a lot of folks, because of habits and so on, they'll work out, they'll do something, and the body habituates. So it's actually healthier to give yourself some rest and recovery. That's the big buzzword in athletics nowadays. So I think you're doing it the right way, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I realize a lot of high performers, they will take 2 or 3 seasons throughout the year to where they don't drink 60 days, 90 days. And so I'm like, okay, I can definitely see myself doing it. So I'm going to try that. That was going to be my new thing. And so we'll see, but I'm excited for it. So testosterone, I think that's in the cards. But I did all those things during the 76 days, and I can contest to what you said is true, the energy levels, the growth and all that. But I did kind of plateau, right? So I'm going to try that out and see where it goes. I'm curious, man. So now that I'm kind of back in the game, I didn't have a hangover for 76 days. What are some good ways to treat a hangover?
Funny you should say that, because I actually developed a hangover cure. A lot of folks will come to me and they always ask me medical questions. I'm honored that they trust me because of my whole background with clinical medicine and biochem and all this other jazz. And, they come to me and say, hey, can you give me advice on this? Can you give me advice on this? A lot of people came to me and say, hey, can you give me a prescription? Because I got a raging hangover. I'm like, I'm not going to write you a prescription. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
But I will make you something that will help you, because there's a World Health Organization formula that was developed to help treat dehydration and diarrhea in kids in the third world, which is the number 1 cause of death worldwide for kids under age 5, dehydration. And so they have these oral rehydration formulas that can be taken, and administered in third world countries much more easily than trying to send somebody to start an IV. So I would mimic that formula, and then 30 minutes later, they're like, what have you done? What is this stuff? So I said, I talked to a friend of mine who was in the beverage industry, and then I founded Replenish Beverages. And so I created a hangover cure, patented it, put the science behind it when I created the investment deck, put all the published data behind why this was a unique formula that reduced inflammation, that helped the liver and kidneys repair more quickly, and so on. So I had to go back and really study all the pathways by which hangovers are generated, and all the pathways of healing and repair by which you can negate those points of damage. And that's where the hangover cure was formed. There's a lot of them out there in the market. A lot of them are just really crushed multivitamins that they just sell better. It's kind of like the same thing as I see in the aesthetic industry. They'll just come up with some technology that's kind of copycat. They'll get Kim Kardashian to promote it.
Yeah, big name.
But there's nothing revolutionary. There's no groundbreaking formula that actually does the job better. And that was a real need. What do you take when you have a hangover? What do? You drink coffee. It's worse than it's sort of the worst thing you could do, because you're already dehydrated and your caffeine's already
People
diuretic.
drink coffee with a hangover?
Well, the formula that I have actually has some caffeine in it, but the caffeine is there because it helps constrict cerebral blood flow, so you reduce that throbbing, because that's one of the benefits of caffeine. But too much caffeine can actually make you dehydrated, which can actually delay the recovery from a hangover. So you have to have that coffee with a ton of water if you're going to drink it.
What causes a really bad hangover? Is it more so the dehydration, or is it more so the lack of sleep?
It's both, and there's also the paraldehydes and the other byproducts of alcohol consumption. Your liver is desperately trying to repair, and so there's a high degree of inflammation that's associated. Inflammation is a big buzzword in medicine these days. A lot of conditions that we thought were isolated are actually inflammatory conditions, cardiac disease and so on, for example. So reducing inflammation is one of the key components of getting rid of the hangover, helping the liver repair. Glutathione, for example, is one of the ingredients, and it's one of the things that helps the liver repair itself. In clinical medicine, for example, when people have been exposed to a toxic agent, or if they've tried to overdose on Tylenol, right? For example, that's my alarm going off. We give them glutathione, for example, IV, to help undo the damage to the liver that's caused by these toxic agents. So these are components in the pathway by which hangovers are generated that I kind of designed to help address, so that people would take it in 30 minutes. They would go back to running the marathon. And the feedback was actually really good. The feedback we got on Amazon was actually fantastic. So
And you take this orally?
yeah, you take a shot in the morning when you wake up.
Okay.
Chug it down. I'll give you some.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm definitely interested in that. How does this compare to like an IV?
That's a great question. I actually created an IV line in my med spa for different things, for athletic performance, for athletic recovery, for hangover relief. The IVs work faster, but believe it or not, well, most people, when they get up in the morning, they feel like crap. They're not going to get up, drive in a car, find an appointment, come to see me. We're closed on Sundays.
No.
They're not going to get to see me and stuff. The IVs are fine, but it's impractical and expensive for most people.
Yeah,
so
it's a couple $100 at least.
I can't knock IVs. We sell them. We offer them. People come and get them. But there's added benefits to taking it orally because it's a much slower absorption. So the effect is much more prolonged, which actually is better.
Yeah.
So
what are your thoughts on, because I didn't know this until probably the last couple years, maybe year and a half, to where I started taking liquid IV in the morning and some of these other salted supplements to complement my water in the morning. And I never drink coffee right away. I love my coffee. I mean, every time I get on a podcast or I get on some sort of call or meeting, I always got to have my coffee. Yeah. And sometimes I won't even drink the whole thing, but just to have it with me, it just kind of like gives me another gear mentally. But that said, I always wake up. I try to go to the gym right away and I will drink a good amount of water. Hey guys, real quick, I just wanted to personally thank you for listening to this podcast. It means the world to me. The only way this show grows is by word of mouth. If there's anyone in your circle that could benefit from this podcast, it would mean the world to me if you could share it with them via text or maybe on your Instagram story. And I'll be sure to keep an eye out on my Instagram for shares so I can reshare you on my Instagram story. Again, thank you so much for listening, and it means the world to me. Now back to the show.
Liquid IV, I don't remember off the top, but it's really mostly just crushed vitamins and minerals. So there's nothing really special about it. You could probably eat a burrito and get the same amount of sodium and potassium.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So they charge you a lot for things that are not necessarily that expensive.
So is it more so the electrolytes or the sodium that helps rehydrate?
All the above.
All the above.
All the above.
So you should be having both. And
the
potassium.
most important part of it is the water that you're adding to it. So if you really think about it, you could take it, if you have the time, you could crush a multivitamin and then add some water to it and then chug that, and it will cost you a fraction of what the liquid IV is going to cost you.
Okay, interesting.
So, yeah.
Interesting. There's a lot of talks out there, like there's a whole movement, especially living in California. You know this better than me, but I would probably say every other person I meet these days is like, oh, I'm vegan, I don't eat meat.
Yeah.
And they think it's healthier. But I follow some other like doctors online, and a lot of these doctors are like calling everyone out. They're like, no, like it's actually better for you to eat red meat, to eat chicken and fish, and have like a high protein diet. What are your thoughts on all this whole vegan movement?
The diet part is something I get probably asked more than anything else. I cut out meat and dairy from my diet about 6 years ago.
Did you? Okay.
I got leaner. I got faster in the gym. People thought I was juicing. They were like, what are you taking? They didn't believe me. I was doing the hardest version of my own workouts, and I was still talking and cracking jokes during class. And they were like, what is this guy on? Let me first talk about dairy, why I'm not a fan. Dairy is basically the milk of a cow. And the cow is, whether you're talking about a cow or a whale, the milk of each species is specific to that species. So you're trying to take a baby cow and turn it into an adult cow, right? You have a proportion of fats and hormones that are physiologically meant for that species, right? Human breast milk is not nowhere near cow's milk. Now add to that the fats that add to that the hormones that they add to increase milk production, to increase profit. Then add to that the antibiotics that they have to add because they cram more cows into fewer sheds for profit. So the profit margin is what drives the desire to push as much milk as possible onto people. But you're getting drug-resistant salmonella and E. coli as a byproduct. You're getting additional growth hormones as a byproduct. So you have women developing fibrocystic disease. you get and you get endometriosis, you get all these hormone-related issues that occur. So the dairy itself is not physiologic, and it's one of the reasons why the lactase enzyme shuts off after a certain point, because we were not meant to drink milk after infancy. So why 60% of the world's population is lactose intolerant to some degree or another is because of this fact. Now, we've been conditioned by a lot of marketing to think that dairy, for example, is healthy, is natural, milk mustache, celebrities, athletes, right? It's nothing of the sort. When you actually add up the cardiovascular disease from all the saturated fats, because the cows can metabolize it, right? But lots of animals can consume things that don't harm them, just like bats can get Ebola and not be affected by it. They can be reservoirs, right? The physiology of different animals is different. And so dairy was not something that humans ever evolved to consume until the 20th century when we started creating dairy farms. They didn't exist in the 18th century or before. Humans did not drink milk for most of human history. So dairy by itself, I believe, is associated with a lot more health consequences than benefits. As for the vegan diet, I'll say that if you're going to choose any source of protein and you have to have animal protein, I would say the seafood, is going to be your best bet.
Why is that?
The vast majority of humans evolved near a body of water. And the reason for that is because when you think about how hunter-gatherer societies evolved, you're not going to outrun a leopard or a cheetah, right?
No.
And their prey has evolved to outrun those guys, right? So we are not going to compete with those predators, land animals, when it comes to catching, protein. The majority of human evolution, where we were hunter-gatherers, we were mostly plant-based. It was easier to catch. Now, think about the majority of people that live near a body of water, which is 70% of the world's population. It is much easier to spear a fish or catch a lobster or eat some, crawfish and catch that as a source of protein than it is to try to chase down an antelope, right?
Yeah.
And so we think of seafood as brain food, fish is like brain food, right? What if we just evolved to consume those omega-3 acids, right? What if that's just part of our normal architecture?
Right.
So maybe what we call brain food is just part of what we're normally supposed to eat. Our gut is actually more of a herbivore gut. Our teeth actually grind like herbivores do. The kind of teeth that tear like predators do, they work in one axis, one motion. They're designed to tear and rip flesh from bone. Our jawline, if we had to compete with land predators, if you threw a naked human out there and have him try to hunt like an animal, we don't have the claws, we don't have the teeth. We're not designed to be terrestrial predators in that sense. So, and if you look at the size of our gut, it's much more of an herbivore gut for digesting plant-based food. Now, I get a lot of heat from people for saying this, but they actually studied vegan diets versus protein diets, and they found that the risk of colon cancer and many other diets, and many other cancers, skyrockets with consumption of processed meats.
Interesting.
And the data is there. I'm like, don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
But the data is there, and the more the data accumulates, the more convincing it becomes. I can't tell you not to live life, just like I tell you, hey, go do your exercise and have your fun, have your drinks. If you're going to cut out meat, know that cutting it back is going to have substantial health benefits, and the data is irrefutable at this point, and it just keeps coming.
So this is a controversial topic because I hear a lot of other doctors out there saying, hey, like, eat the red meat. It's high in protein, it's high in creatine, all the good things that are gonna help you build lean muscle and help you burn fat and stay healthy and ultimately make you stronger. And so what is what? I personally,
that's a great
question. I personally like used to buy into like, oh, like let me eat more white meat, it's a little bit cleaner. But I would say I started really leaning into red meat diet maybe like 6 months ago. And personally, I would say that I actually feel better eating a high volume of red meat and protein steaks. Like I eat a lot of steak now. We have a personal chef that comes into the office every Monday, and she'll cook me a lunch on Monday. and then she'll meal prep me meals that I can eat in the office throughout the rest of the week.
Nice.
Because I haven't cooked in like 4.5 years. And so for me, I was doing a lot of Uber Eats, and which is convenient. But I thought, man, for the same cost I'm spending on all these Uber Eats,
Sure.
we could have a personal chef come in the office every Monday, once a week, and prep all these meals.
I love that.
And so I told her, I said, hey, let's just do like a high like steak diet, high protein diet, a lot of red meats. And so she's been making a lot of like lean meals for me, incorporating veggies and that sort of thing. But each of these meals have some red meat. And then I've been going out to like, born and raised here in San Diego is like my favorite restaurant. I probably frequent it like 2 to 3 times a week. So I would say the last 6 months I've been eating a high volume of steak diet, and I got to say my body feels really good.
Yeah, well, you know, it's every person is different. There's an individualism to us that I love, which makes my job so fascinating and exciting. I can only talk about the evolution of biology, but I can also talk about the folks on TikTok that come at me. You know, there's a guy that loves to bust my chops, but he's a psychiatrist who had his license taken away for spreading misinformation. Now he's all over TikTok talking about red meat.
I gotta look some
It's
up.
hilarious because he's contradicted himself so many times, and it's been funny to point it out because I'm just like, okay, you know, which one is it, right? And then when you try to point out, like, look, the data is there. Like, I'm not making this stuff up. Right? People get up in arms. I'm like saying, look, I'm not telling you not to live. I'm telling you to just be mindful. I'm telling you to have some temperance, everything in moderation type of thing. I can tell you what worked for me. I lived in the South for 6 years, and I loved that barbecue, man. I got a taste for it. If I even smelled it now, I would throw up because my body has adapted so well. And I'll tell you one more thing that I think is kind of important. I like to tell people that I cut out the middleman, because who are the largest and most muscular animals on Earth?
Yeah.
The gorillas, the rhinos, the elephants, the giraffes. They're all herbivores. They all get their protein. I mean, you put Mike Tyson in a room with a gorilla. Gorilla's gonna pound him to pieces, right? That gorilla.
By the way, we're working on getting Iron Mike Tyson on the podcast. So I just got locked in a sponsorship deal with
awesome.
Built.
That's awesome.
And Mike Tyson is also one of their brand ambassadors. So shout out to Tyson. I want to get him on the pod, and we'll talk shop.
People say, well, where am I going to get my protein? From the same place as an elephant gets its protein. A lions ain't going to mess with an elephant, right? From the same place a rhino gets its protein. They're all herbivores. And so it's really funny because people have this misconception about like diet and so on.
Right.
And again, I tell people, you got to live a little bit. But the meat industry has kind of taken a little bit on the defensive right now because of this data. And so they've done the usual, let's hire some celebrities, you know, meat is what's for dinner, it's what real men eat type of thing. And then I talk to a lot of athletes. In fact, one of my favorite clients, he's a big influencer on YouTube. He's fully vegan, and he's also a bodybuilder.
Okay.
And he is ripped.
A vegan.
He's fully vegan.
But he's taking protein shakes or no?
No, but he does. You should follow him.
Okay.
Brian Turner. He's amazing, and he dispels a lot of this stuff much more eloquently than I do. But it's really funny because we get the same sort of stuff. I can't be an evangelist for everything. You know, I talk about fitness. I talk about diet. I talk about, you know, how to burn fat so that you don't need liposuction. But if you do, you come see me, obviously. But there are folks who have been doing this for longer than I have that can make the case just as well as I can. I can talk about the clinical studies and science until the cows come home. But convincing people to make the switch means changing a lifestyle which is oftentimes ingrained in them for many years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And changing habits is the hardest part of making any change, whether it's fitness, diet, relationships, business. People learn habits, and those habits become very difficult to change. So when I tell people to do anything that's beneficial for them, I always say, boil the frog slowly and make it an easy change for yourself.
I'm curious, though, question for you. So one of my buddies, his brother used to be in the NBA, played for the Lakers for quite some time and had a really good run with the Phoenix Suns. But that said, he would say like, hey, like these NBA teams have like dietitians, nutritionists on the team. And so every player based on their metabolism would have a specialized like meal plan that would help them as an individual play at their optimal peak performance level.
Yeah.
And what LeBron James ate would be different than what another player would eat. And so I guess my question would be like, do you think that some people vibe better based on their personal genetics with like a more fish-based diet, and some people are going to vibe better with a more plant-based diet, and some people are just going to perform better with like a more red meat-based diet?
Very likely true. A lot of folks who've actually come and I've helped them train, for example, I'll take their body temperature throughout the course of the day. Some people do better working out in the morning. I only work out in the evening. Working out in the morning is impossible for me. It destroys my day. And, that's a function of just how our bodies work. Diet is infinitely more complex. So if you think about that, it makes perfect sense that some people are going to digest things better just because of the natural variation from person to person. So I have no doubt that that's going to be true.
And do you think that's a function of like evolution and like where their ancestors grew up in what part of the world? So like, for example, if your ancestors grew up in like, a climate to where there's a lot of water and lakes and where they're used to eating fish, well, then that's what's going to help them perform better versus growing up in a region where your ancestors were in the middle of the country and they were forced to hunt cows and other forms of red meat out there in order to get their protein, and that's why they're going to perform better in terms of like what they ate. Do you think that's a function of that or no?
That's a great question, because I'll go back to that evolutionary theory that I was talking about. Yes, the majority of time humans were hunter-gatherers and the majority of their diet was plant-based. However, go to places like the Inuit populations in Alaska. Their primary source of food is basically hunting seals. There is no agriculture.
They eat seals.
Well, they hunt. They still hunt seals, and they still hunt
seal meat. Is that white meat or is that red meat?
I don't know.
Because to me they're like a hybrid of both.
I mean, it's probably red, which blood is blood. But if you really think about where they get their source of protein, they could not develop agriculture like other humans could. We domesticated dogs. We started growing crops. We started having animals. We start being able to eat meat as a luxury when we couldn't for the majority of human evolution. These folks didn't have grasslands where they could plant crops, and their environment is completely inhospitable to farming anyway. And they still maintain that same lifestyle. So I think your point is very well taken, that there's a very strong component of genetics and ancestry to how we process our diet. I can only tell you that the data from a plant-based diet is very, very strong, and it keeps coming. So if I can get people to increase their plant-based consumption, I think they're going to reap the dividends from not just from weight loss and so on, but from many other things.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So if you were curious, the individual that we had Alex come in and pull up, Dr. James Dinnick, and so he puts a lot of content out on like the government will be like, don't eat salt, don't use butter, don't eat red meat, and he'll be like, use salt on everything, eat red meat for everything because it's like high protein, it's going to help you burn fat. And the government's like, oh, don't go out in the sun, it's not good. He's like, yeah, go out in the sun, it's good for you. So
I'll tell you
he
one
tries
thing
to like
about
debunk
that.
all this stuff.
I'll tell you one thing about that. I always try to tell folks that I like to stay in my lane, so to speak. If somebody comes to me and they say, hey, what are your thoughts about eyelid surgery? I'm like, well, I don't do it because it's not my thing. Yeah. But I'll send you to somebody who does. And with all due respect to the good chiropractor, I don't know that they teach nutrition in chiropractic school. I don't know that they teach, physiology to that extent in chiropractic school. And a lot of the folks who talk about this stuff are folks who veer into areas of medicine that even I would not veer into. It's like, fools rush in where angels fear, to tread. And it's the same thing. One of the reasons, again, I started that TikTok is because of the number of people that thought it would be cool to start some sort of a TikTok or channel and talk about, like, when you talk business, you know what you're talking about. Like, I would not talk business or try to converse about business. I'd shut my mouth and say, teach me, sensei.
Totally.
Right? But so many of these accounts proliferated, and so much information was being disseminated that was easily refutable. Easily refutable. I would take Dr. James and say, yo, show me your data, because I would love to see the data,
Yeah.
and I can give you a stack of opposing data. But the average person doesn't know that. They'll see doctor before they name this. They suddenly think the guy's a Harvard PhD, right? And
he could just be like a chiropractor.
he is a chiropractor.
Oh, you know of him?
I know.
Yeah,
He
okay,
is a
okay.
chiropractor.
Okay.
So because of that, I mean, and I've been to chiropractors. They're great. I mean, when I had my back issues, hey man, they're fantastic at what they do. But they're not going to do your brain surgery, and neither would I. But I would tell you that. I would tell you that because I think a certain level of knowledge also should come with a certain amount of humility. You should know when to say I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's a lost art.
Yeah. No, I feel you. And it's part of having a growth mindset is being open-minded and being humble enough to realize, like, you know, stay in your lane. You don't know everything. Like, I'm an action taker, but I'm the first one to admit, you ask my team, I'm the first one to admit, like, yeah, I'm not the expert at everything. Right. I just know how to surround myself with people that are experts.
I love that.
And that's how I grow, right? I'm curious, as we're talking about the red meat and all that sort of thing. So, like, one of the benefits of the red meat is the creatine. Talk a little bit about the benefits, the pros and cons of creatine.
You know, that was probably also one of my most popular videos. Endurance athletes don't get nearly as much from creatine as strength and power athletes do. It's an amino acid. It has been extensively studied. There's volumes of data on it. I can't even speak to all the things about it. But its chief benefit has been for people like powerlifters, bodybuilders, people, if you're doing any type of activity where there's a short sprint type of event, you're going to get much more benefit from creatine than an endurance athlete. Now, there is some data that suggests endurance athletes also get benefits from it. And if you're trying to build muscle, creatine is a must-have. For sports like mine, it doesn't really benefit me because I was an endurance swimmer. I swam the English Channel, which was like a 12-and-a-half-hour ordeal where creatine wouldn't have done any benefit to me. And for those types of endurance events, the effect is modest. Bodybuilders use it and swear by it, and I recommend it for that purpose. The main misconceptions are: does it cause you to lose hair? Does it cause kidney damage, and so on? And the correct answer is use it properly with the proper dosage, and you'll be fine.
Okay, so if you use too much of it, it could lead to hair loss.
I don't think that the jury is completely in on that. I think there's still some conflicting data, and until that is more definitively answered, I'm not going to say yes or no.
Is hair loss primarily just a function of like genetics, the
Yes.
primary thing?
Yes.
It is. Okay, that
Yes.
makes sense. Interesting. Yeah,
There's some cool things on the horizon coming with that, by the way.
Really? Like what?
I'll talk about it later. I like to do my own research and make sure that I'm not just saying like something that's just hitting the headlines.
Yeah. Give us a little sneak peek though.
So there's a component of the DNA molecule that is now being investigated that when injected into the scalp can cause hair growth to be even better than minoxidil. So it's an active area of research, which, you know, maybe at a later time when I find out more, I'll come back and tell you.
So you're thinking in 4 or 5 years, potentially,
Maybe sooner.
you won't have to go and do hair transplants. You can just take some injections and your hair will just start growing back.
We do the PRP for hair at the med spa at Avalon Laser. We do a lot of it. You have to select.
What's PRP?
Platelet-rich plasma.
Okay.
So we draw the blood, we spin it down, we activate it, and then we inject it into the scalp. We do a different technique with rolling, so we actually inject it at the proper depth, where you don't just inject willy-nilly. You inject at the depth where it's actually going to cause the most benefit, and that's a whole different technique to the PRP. Some people do stem cells. I've had it done.
And the idea that it's going to contribute to more hair growth?
Yes. So you think about that typical male pattern baldness. Why you don't get it on the sides is because, as I like to explain in kind of colloquial terms, the sides, you can think of it as soil. It's fertile. It's fertile for hair growth. But as you age, DHT, dihydrotestosterone, which is the metabolite of testosterone, makes this area inhospitable for hair growth, and then the hair dies and falls out. And so what minoxidil is trying to do is to make the hair more fertile, fertilize the soil, so to speak. What PRP does vastly more effectively is also turn the soil more fertile so that you grow your own hair in that area. So with the right person who doesn't have too much hair loss, so we're not completely bald, for example, just a little bit of loss in the crown or the vertex, if you draw the blood, spin it down, activate it with the proper kit and the proper technique, and inject it with a series of about 3 to 4 treatments, you actually can get some pretty impressive hair growth.
Really?
So
And this is the new thing that you're talking about, or this is something you guys have in your office?
We do it in the office. We've been doing it for years.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
They're adding exosomes and stuff to it. Again, the jury for me is still out because I didn't see that much of a difference when I did regular PRP versus when I did the exosome therapy. Some people swear by it, but I would like to see the type of data that scientists like me, salivate over. Head-to-head, placebo-controlled, randomized trials, the kind of things that I can look at and say, okay, there's some evidence here.
Yeah. Why is it that some males bald a lot quicker and younger and some guys will have a full head of hair at age 60?
I would say genetics is the primary component. Testosterone is a huge component. Testosterone can actually make you lose hair like nothing else.
Oh, so getting on TRT would
Yes,
contribute to more hair loss?
very much so.
Really?
Absolutely.
What about just naturally increasing your testosterone?
I don't think that's going to be quite as much of an issue as giving your body this massive
Injection.
gush
Interesting.
of testosterone, which is going to get converted to DHT, which is going to cause the hair loss. And,
Is there a blocker that you could take?
people have been taking Propecia. I used to take it. I stopped taking it. It does have a lot of other side effects. It can actually increase depression in men. And so the more they studied it, and I talked to a good friend of mine who's an endocrinologist here in town, he says they should never have made that drug legal. It should never have been made legal. He's seen a lot more issues as an endocrinologist than I have, so I have to take his word for it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So this new one that you're talking about that you're just kind of previewing for us right now, what's the name of that one for the hair loss?
We don't have a trade name for it because
No trade name.
it's still in
Got it.
investigative.
And you think it's less than a couple years out?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Interesting.
Oh yeah. When there's money to be made, trust me.
And it's going to put all these hair transplant folks out of business, or what?
I think hair transplants will be a thing of the past in about 5 years.
Yeah, because I'm
To
like,
be honest.
I always wear hats, and people don't know, but I got hair.
Yeah.
But I mean,
You got good hair, man.
I'm 39, right? I'll be 39 in a week, and I got hair, but definitely it is a little bit thinning right back here,
Yeah.
and in the front. But I definitely still have a pretty good full head of hair. But
Start the minoxidil now, just like we talked
Yeah.
about with preventive Botox.
okay,
Prevention means you won't even need it later. It's the same exact principle. So I would go to Costco, get the cheap, minoxidil foam like I use, and it does more than enough.
it's preventative, or it brings it back.
It's mostly preventative.
Okay.
They like to tout that it grows new hair. We put people on it after their PRP injections because it helps them not lose the hair that they do grow.
Okay.
So that little bit of peach fuzz doesn't really give a lot of satisfaction. But in terms of preventing hair loss, I would say start it now.
Yeah, absolutely. What about eye color changing drops?
Yeah.
Is that something that is a real thing out there?
No,
It's not.
no,
So it's just completely fake.
completely garbage.
Okay. So the only thing that really changes your eye color is going to be the contacts.
Yeah, and that's probably the safest way to do it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a big to do about that. I addressed in a video years ago, and I'm just like, of course, talking heads will get on there on camera. Look what this drop did to my eye.
Yeah.
Completely baloney. And like, where did you guys not think that someone's gonna just contradict this at some point?
Yeah.
It's out there, man. People just blow up the airwaves with all kinds of stuff. And that's just happened to be one of them.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, my man, I appreciate you coming on the show. Dr. Reza, always dropping bombs, always dropping knowledge, dude. I'm a big fan of everything you're doing. And, dude, I'm excited to, we got to reconnect soon, maybe on Dave Sanders' boat. We'll do a little side tat on Glorieta,
love that.
hopefully here in a couple weeks and make it happen. And you're also in Fastlane, yeah?
I am.
Okay, so you're going to be at the August 24th yacht party event.
I will be there.
I will be there as well.
I'm looking forward to seeing
We'll
you.
definitely connect, my man. How can the folks get in touch with you?
So my Instagram is at Dr. Reza, DRREZA_T. It's the same as my TikTok handle. And the med spa, if you want to come in for aesthetic services, is Avalon Laser. So it's at Avalon Laser. So give us a follow. I like to think that we're probably a straight shooter-ish as you can get. We'll tell you when you don't need something, which is just as important as telling you when you might need something.
There it is. He's Dr. Reza, not a chiropractor. I'm Rich Numbers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.